Fronius inverter with Byd Battery Box Premium. Hello everybody and welcome to today's Fronius webinar. Today we have got a relatively new topic. Today we will give you insights in the compatibilities of all Fronius inverters with the overall new Byd battery boxes Premium Hvs and Hvm. Your Fronius team today consists of me. My name is Sandro from Team Trainings and Education from Fronius International, the headquarters in Austria. And together with my colleague, Michael Raunick, he is in Team Trainings too. We will do together the webinar today. If you have got any questions during the webinar, please feel free to ask them directly to us via the chat function or the question box. We will give you immediate reply to this, and also afterwards, if there is some time over, that means some time, we will answer you the questions live. Okay, so let's start directly with the agenda. What's the topic for today? Of course, the Byd Battery Box Premium. We will have a focus today on this, on the system overview, and also on the technical specifications. Second topic is the combination of our hybrid inverters. So that means I will give you some insights in the Fronius hybrid inverter section and also define the possible combinations with the new battery box from Byd. Then the second part, so more or less the half of the webinar, the other half will do my colleague Michael, and he will give you insights into the system structure. That means it directly goes into the installation and commissioning process of the Fronius and Byd solution. Good. So let's start with the Byd Battery Box Premium. What's the product about? So Byd launched quite some months ago the new battery box Premium Hvs and Hvm. So that's more or less a completely new product. There was the existing Byd battery box HV, and that's I would say more an optimization of the existing HV product. What offers Byd now? You as a customer or installer become more and more flexible. That means there are now two different storage variants which you can choose. And in fact, these two options are listed here. On the one hand, it's the Premium Box HVS, and on the other hand, it's the HVM battery. What's now the difference between Hvs and Hvm? You can actually see it with the letters. That means the S, that stands for the small. That means therefore there it is related to the battery modules. These are smaller, but in fact they have higher voltage levels and higher power with less capacity. And the HVM, also the letter M, stands for medium. That means medium battery modules. That means therefore you have higher capacities, so storage possibilities up to 22.1 kilowatt hours, but of course less power because of lower voltage levels. What has changed or what has been optimized by Byd to the former battery is of course the design. So in comparison to the HV battery, it's less space required, but you have a higher energy density. That means the overall battery looks more smart, and each module of the battery has doubled in the capacity. Also new is a visual feedback. That means on top of the BMS, you have got a LED status light. That means you as a customer or installer have from now on direct feedback from the battery if everything is running or if there is an error in the battery. Also, the installation is very, very easy. I have also done it by myself for 2 or 3 times so far. So I can really tell you that's very, very easy. So it's a kind of a plug and play solution. And you have, of course, much fewer modules because the modules got bigger in comparison to the former one. And there are improved in some mechanisms, for example, for the locking in between the modules. And maybe some prospect for the future. It should also be cascadable. That means a parallel connection should be possible with the new battery series. Therefore, we will in future have the possibility to connect up to 3 storage towers without additional components. That means you have then a maximum capacity of up to 66.3 kilowatt hours with the Byd Battery Box Premium HVM. Good. So here you can see the battery. That's how it looks like, and maybe some technical details about it. It's again a lithium iron phosphate battery. We are relying on those technologies because they are very safe and very proven and appreciated by our customers. For the HVS battery, we have capacities of up to 10.2 kilowatt hours, and which with the HVM we have got up to 22.1 kilowatt hours of possible storage capacity. But of course, that's the big advantage. You can choose it like you want. That means you can really adapt it to your customer needs, to your personal needs, and choose the amount of modules, and therefore you can configure it yourself how it makes the best sense and how it's of course economic feasible to the greatest extent. The maximum charging and discharging power is 9 kilowatts for the Bmu Gen24 Plus. I will also come back to that because that's also slightly different from inverter to inverter and also from battery to battery, because it is always depending on the amount of modules you have and on the selected inverter type. The weight is 38 kilogram per model, so it's of course possible that one person can carry one module. That's possible. For the temperature range, we recommend you to install it inside. It's of course possible to install it also in a protected outdoor area, but the best way would be very close to the inverter, for example, in a technical room or in a cellar or in a garage, something like this. Something like that would suit perfectly for such a storage combination. Highest protection class or a very high protection class, IP55 you see, and the communication is done by Modbus RTU RS45. Michael will give you more on that later on, how you can set up the communication path from the battery to the inverter. One thing I want to mention at this point is our Fronius smart meter, which you can see here. The smart meter is crucial for any battery installation, so that's very, very important. So please be sure, if you want to realize such a system together with Fronius, you have to install this energy meter, this smart meter at the feed-in point. That's the basic information our inverter needs in order that the system is running properly and you can use it to the greatest extent. Again, here the technical details. I do not want to go here into detail now. Maybe only 2 things which are important. It's the usable capacity per module. That means the capacity of one such module, which is for the HVS 2.6 kilowatt hours roundabout, and for the Premium HVM 2.8 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. And the voltage levels you see here is the big difference, because for the HVS you have nearly doubled the voltage of each module in comparison to the HVM, and therefore you can also have, of course, higher efficiencies and higher charge and discharge power rates. Of course, yes. So much to the technical data of the battery, and now look at the combination of Fronius and BYD. So what are our storage solutions from Fronius? On the one hand, we've got our existing inverter, which is the Fronius SIMO Hybrid. So in any cases, if you want to realize a high voltage DC coupled storage system, you have to be sure to have a hybrid inverter. And in our case, one possibility would be the Fronius SIMO Hybrid. It's available in the power classes from 3 to 5 kilowatts AC output power. And of course, a prerequisite is the smart meter at the feed-in point. Currently, we are compatible with the Byd Battery Box HV. That's the former one, which is no longer produced, but of course, we are still compatible with it. And with the new one, that means with the Battery Box Premium HVM, we are fully compatible. And with our new hybrid inverter, which is about to start in a few weeks, the Fronius Gen24 Plus, we are therefore fully compatible with both of the new batteries. That means with the HVM and the HVS. Maybe a few words about the Gen24 Plus. That's our uniquely versatile hybrid inverter, which will be launched in a few weeks. We will start with the SIMO Gen24 Plus. That's a 3-phase hybrid inverter in the power classes from 6 to 10 kilowatts AC. And at the beginning of next year, we will complete our product portfolio also with a 1-phase hybrid inverter, which will be the Primo Gen24 Plus in the power classes from 3 to 6 kilowatts AC output power. Maybe if you want to realize such system, it is highly recommended to check this combination matrix, because it's in fact the case that not every inverter is compatible with every battery. And therefore, it makes, of course, sense to avoid any uncertainties or potential problems with the customer with wrong purchasements or something like that. It's, of course, our recommendation before you install such system to check this combination matrix. It's also in the manual of the Byd battery. You can find this on our homepage, of course, in this webinar, or also in our Fronius Solar Configurator, which gives you all the possibilities. And therefore, you can see with the hybrid, SIMO hybrid, we are fully compatible with the existing one and also with the HVM battery. And for the other ones, please be sure you see here are some types not compatible. Some combinations are not possible. Please be sure if you want to install such system with our new Gen24 Plus devices to check this in advance to be 100% sure. And I also told you about the possible charging and discharging power. There is also again this matrix, which looks at first sight very complicated. Sorry for that, but what I want to tell you about that is just because this is a modular system, and each module has around about 50 volts for the HVM and 100 volts for the HVS. Therefore, the charging and discharging power is also alternating. That means it's different depending on what battery type you have. And therefore, maybe two values that are the maximum charging and discharging powers. For example, this would be in this case with the big primer. That means with the 6 kilowatts primer, you would have possible charging and discharging power with the Hvs 7.7 of 6.34 kilowatts. That would be I would say the best charging and discharging power which you can reach with the primer. And with the Cymer, it is in fact 9 kilowatts. That can be again reached with the biggest HVS. Of course, with the biggest one, you have up to 400 volts, or also with the biggest HVM. Again, the same scenario. You have the highest possible charging and discharging power. So if your customers are focused on that, please be also sure that this can be slightly different from battery type to battery type, and keep this in mind. What is now possible with the Fronius solution? So therefore we can provide simultaneous energy flows with our inverter. So our inverter is really the heart of every energy storage system. And when we talk about those simultaneous energy flows, that is at Fronius called the multi-flow technology. Because as you can see here on the scheme, our inverter is the heart of the system, and it manages more or less all these energy flows which can be done simultaneously. Just here one example, there is PV generation, there have to be some load supplied in the household, and also the battery can be linked there and also contribute to the load to supply the loads in the household. That's possible. One scenario, if there would only be some kind of surplus energy left, it can also be possible that we directly supply the loads and also give energy to the battery, or if the battery is full, this also something the inverter detects. It can also feed in into the grid if there is energy left. So it's kind of the central part of every household installation. It's the inverter, and this multi-flow technology is well approved and therefore highly appreciated too. You see here again some other paths. So this is all possible simultaneously. So we can also load the battery from the AC grid, for example, or if we have some AC coupling of the inverter for another inverter, of maybe an existing inverter at the customer side, we can also connect them on the AC bus and therefore integrate this system in our hybrid system with the battery. That's possible. Good, and we also have very, very good news from Germany with this multi-flow technology. So this year we took part at the Energy Storage Inspection 2020 for the first time with listing, and therefore we reached really, really great results. So you see here on the right the comparison with our competitors, and we reached with the first time ever participating the first place with the highest efficiency of this combination, the GEN24 Plus and the Byd battery. What does this mean in fact? So there was indicated the System Performance Index, that's the SPI. That's kind of a simulation-based real-time applications, like for example, sector coupling with EVs, hot water storage, and also battery storage, of course. And therefore we reach the highest efficiency levels. That means we are in efficiency class A with an inverter efficiency of 97%. And this system performance, that means the simulation-based index of 94%, means we are clearly on the top, and of course very, very proud of this result, and this underlines this great combination of Fronius and BYD. Good, that was it so far from my side. I see Michael is coming around and he will now overtake the second part of the presentation. So he will give you insights on the system structure.
Thank you, Sandro, and welcome to your audience. My name is Michael, and I will do the system structure and the installation and commissioning part of the Byd Battery Box Premium with you. So first of all, let's have a look on the system structure itself. So as mentioned before, all you need for your battery system is in this case a hybrid inverter, as you can see here with the Fronius Gen24 Plus. Plus, you need our Fronius smart meter for detecting and visualization of the energy flows in the system. And of course, you need the battery system, in this case, the Byd Battery Box Premium. Furthermore, of course, you need some installation material, and therefore we recommend for you to use the DC cabling, for example, in this case, the 10 square millimeter DC cabling, of course, for DC plus and DC minus power connection from the inverter to the battery system. Furthermore, you get delivered some screws for fixing the battery modules to the wall so that there is no tilting possible. Furthermore, you need some Cat5 shielded cable. So in this case, we recommend for you just to use the RJ45 standard, so Cat5 cable for data communication between the Fronius inverter and the battery system. Furthermore, for the ground wire, you need cable lugs. So in this case, you can use a standard cable lug for fixing the ground wire, the protective earth on the battery box itself. Please note, however, BYD says you need an extra protective earth cable with extra potential to earth. So it is not enough to just connect the ground wire to the Fronius inverter, but you really need to bring it on an extra potential in the electric circuit, for example, in the electric cabinet at the house connection, for example. So please make sure to connect this ground wire correctly. Furthermore, of course, you can choose between the HVM and HVS variant, like Sandro told you before. For the installation of the battery modules itself, you first need your ground stand, so the feeds that you see beneath. So you're just placing this ground panel on the floor, and then you just have to add up the battery modules in your system. So depending on how many battery modules you're using in the system, you just connect them series-wise on top of each other. So just connect them to each other. And then you have a screwing installation where you can screw these modules to each other so that they are fixed to each other and can take up. A very important point here for installation is that you don't mix up HVM and HVS modules with each other. So if you're installing one battery tower, please make sure that you only use either HVM modules or HVS modules. These modules can't be interchanged, so please don't mix up HVM and HVS modules. On top of the last battery module, you are then fixing the BMS module. So there is this Bmu module that you can see. And of course, again, you fix it with the screws on the side. And then the installation part of the BYD is done. After that, of course, on the upper part, you have this Bmu and the connection area. And in I hope the audio problems are now microphone away. Can you hear us?
Sorry, there was some interruption. Maybe can you give us a hand or some sign? So, okay, perfect. We get some feedback. Michael, can you please go back 1 or 2 slides and continue?
Perfect. So thank you, Sandro, for the heads up. First of all, we start again now with the modules. So when you install the modules to each other, there is a very easy screwing system, and therefore you can just add up these battery modules. This connection area, on how many you then proceed with the installation process. There are 2 different variants of this. So in this case, we are now proceeding with the battery modules. So you are installing the battery modules to each other, and then it is possible to screw the battery modules to each other. So depending on how many battery modules you're installing in the system, just add up the battery modules, and on top of these modules, you are just installing the so-called Bmu module. So this is the last module that comes on top, and the Bmu module implements the connection area of the battery system as well as the data communication area. So within this Bmu module, it is now possible to do the data communication to the Fronius hybrid inverter. So in this case, the first connection variant is the network plug, and we recommend to use such a network plug because it's the most easiest, most comfortable way of connecting the battery to the inverter. So as you see in the picture, you have the possibility to use the network plug and just plug it into the right upper corner, up corner of the BYD connection area. Just plug it in, and then you have 4 pin connections to the Fronius inverter. And in this case, with the Fronius inverter, you have 4 pins. So with the Fronius Simul hybrid, you have D+, D-, and ground connection. And these are the battery box pins 1, 2, and 8. Furthermore, we have our plus 12 volt signal. So from the plus 12 volt, we have the battery box pin 7. And with that, it is possible to connect the plus connection from the Fronius Simul hybrid to the battery box. In the next slide, you see now here the battery box connection pin. So this is the Cat5 cable connected to the network connection of the battery box. And then we have, this is very important, twisted pair shield cables. So in this case, you see the D+ and D- connection coming from the Fronius Simul hybrid. These cables must then be twisted to each other. So in this case, with the network cable, this is already done. And then you connect it to pin 1 and 2 of the battery box. The other 2 cables is the plus, so this 12 volt plus signal, and the ground connection. And these 2 cables should again be twisted to each other. So this is in this case the brown and the white cable that you see here. Furthermore, for connection to the Fronius smart meter, it is then important to connect the D+, D-, and ground connection from the data manager plug to the Fronius smart meter. So this is then the third connection to the Fronius smart meter for visualization and tracking of the PV surplus energy in the system. The second connection variant, this can be achieved with the pin connection. So in case you don't have a network cable available, you can also connect the cables via pins. And therefore, you see the upper part of the connection area, there's a pin connection. And then all you need to do is to connect the right battery box pins to the Fronius pins on the Fronius Simul hybrid inverter. So in this case, we have the battery box pin 7 and 8. These are the connection ports for D+ and D- on the Fronius inverter. And we have the connection ports, battery box pins 5 and 6. This again is then plus and minus from the data manager plug. Again, please make sure that D+ and D- are twisted to each other and that the cables are shielded. So nevertheless, we are recommending you a Cat5 cable at least. And again, the plus and minus cables should also be twisted. Furthermore, again, you are doing the connection to the Fronius smart meter with D+, D- and ground. Again, also, please make sure that D+ and D- also to the Fronius smart meter is twisted so that there are no interferences on this communication path. After all you need to do is to determine the connection, so to set your termination resistor. Of course, with our Modbus connection, it is always necessary to do a 120 ohm termination resistor. And in this case, with the Byd battery box, it is possible to activate or deactivate the 120 ohm termination resistor on the battery system itself. So here you see on the left side the communication paths, and then on the right hand side you see the dip switches that can be activated or deactivated. And depending on the position of the battery box in this Ethernet communication, you have to activate or deactivate the 120 ohm termination resistance. So we then have three options that you can see on the right hand side. So first of all, the Fronius smart meter is on one hand side of this communication path, and the battery is on the other hand side. So that means that the Fronius inverter is at the middle of this communication path, and therefore the Fronius inverter has to have a deactivated 120 ohm resistor, and the battery and the Fronius smart meter has to activate the 120 ohm resistor to terminate this communication. So in this case, you can set a 120 ohm resistor on the Fronius smart meter. This is in the delivery of the smart meter. You can set it between D plus and D minus. And of course, with the battery box, you just activate the dip switch to active. On the other hand side, on the inverter, you just press the dip switch on the data manager plug to off, and therefore the 120 ohms are deactivated. Option 2 and option 3 are then another option that you can, for example, set the Fronius smart meter in the middle or the battery box in the middle. So as you see, depending on the position of the battery and the smart meter and the inverter, you have to set the 120 ohm resistor at the right place. So therefore, if the battery box is at the end, please make sure that the 120 ohm termination resistor is set to active. Furthermore, the commissioning, of course, is a big part, and we will go through the part of commissioning now. First of all you need to do to commission the battery system is the activation of the battery and the access point of it. So to do the commissioning, you have to connect to the access point of the battery, and therefore BYD has developed a new commissioning app, and this app can be downloaded on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. And this app is called bConnect. So if you want to download it, just search in the Google Play Store or App Store, just search it for the app bConnect. Afterwards, you are activating the battery system. So therefore, you activate the battery via the main switch. So you find this main switch of the battery on the right-hand side of the battery system. And after that, the access point of the battery starts up automatically. After that, you can take your smart device, so for example, a tablet or a smartphone where you have downloaded the bConnect app, and then you establish the communication with this smartphone app. Please make sure for commissioning that you first switch on the battery system and afterwards switch on the inverter itself. All you need for the BYD bConnect app is the access data, and in this case, when you connect to the bConnect app, the Wi-Fi password is BYDB/box, and this is all capital letters and special instead of box. So you are just typing in this password, you're connecting to the BYD Wi-Fi, and then type in the Wi-Fi password BYDB box. Afterwards, it is possible to do a firmware update on the BYD bConnect app, and therefore you just go to the settings of the app and go to download firmware. With this step, it is possible to update the firmware, and then all you need to do is to click on the button update firmware to bring the BYD system to the newest firmware update. After that, there are 5 or 6 very easy steps of commissioning the battery system itself. First of all, in the app, you are now choosing the right time and date for the installation. So just choosing the right time. After that, you can select the inverter. So in this case, you select the Fronius inverter. And after that, you can select the battery module and the grid. So in this case, the battery module, you will select Hvs or Hvm, depending on which module you're installing. And on pound 4, you are selecting the grid. So you're selecting either if you are in a 3-phase grid or in a single-phase grid, you can select it here under the grid settings. Step 5 and 6 is then step 5 is then the check button. So here you can check your settings that you have defined. So in this case, the inverter, the module, the battery modules, so the quantities per tower, how many battery modules are installed, and of course the grid and the phase type. After that, there is a 6th step, and there you have to complete the process. So after submitting this check screen, you can just click on complete, and then the commissioning with the BYD app is done. The second step of commissioning is then in the Fronius inverter. So of course you need to access the web interface of the Fronius inverter itself. And a very important step here, especially for the Fronius Symo hybrid inverters that are already out there, you have to do a Fronius Symo hybrid software update. So after connecting to the Wi-Fi to the access point of the Fronius inverter, you just have to go to the settings, and there is the point firmware update. And this firmware update is very important because first, when you do the firmware update, it is possible to select the BYD Box Premium HVM in the settings. So please go to the web interface of the Fronius inverter, go to firmware update and download the newest firmware update. This firmware update will be available from 10th of August 2020. So as you see, there are some days to go until the firmware update is ready, but until the 10th of August, it is possible to update the firmware of the Symo hybrid. After that, the commissioning process is very straightforward. All you need to do after the firmware update is go to the settings of the inverter, click on System Overview, and then select the right battery. So in this case, we will select the BYD B-Box Hvs or Hvm. And furthermore, you can select the battery charging from DNO grid. Please note, this battery charging from DNO grid is not necessarily to check, but it is good to check if you want to use further functions like, for example, the time of use functionality. So with the time of use functionality, it is then possible, for example, to charge the battery with energy from the public grid. So in case of cheap energy tariffs or nighttime tariffs, you can use this check button for enabling the charging from the DNO grid. Furthermore, with the commissioning of the Gen24 Plus devices, it is possible to commission on the Gen24 Plus devices. All you need to do here is, of course, to enter the settings of the Gen24 Plus device and then click on device configurations and components. And under the components, you can then add the BYD type. So in this case, for example, the BYD Premium HVS or HVM. And then you can set all the settings you need. For example, the state of charge limit mode. You can set a state of charge limit if you want to. So for example, that there is a minimum state of charge of 10% or 20%. For example, if you choose to have the backup power mode available and want to make sure that there is always enough energy stored in the battery system. Then you can set the button allow battery charging from other generators in the home network. Of course, this is very useful if you have secondary inverters in the system. And again, the check button allow battery charging from public grid. You can check it on if you want to charge it with the time of use function, for example. Then you click on the button add, and from this time on, the BYD Premium system is added to your Fronius system. The availability with the Gen24 Plus devices, they will be available with market launch of our inverters. So as soon as the inverters are available, the software communication, of course, will work with the BYD HVS and HVM variants. If you need any support and warranty claims, of course, the European BYD partner EFT Systems is available for support and warranty claims. So if you have any problems or support topics with the BYD system itself, please check out to EFT Systems and they will help you with support and warranty. For the Australian BYD partner, we have the partner Alps Power, and they will help you for the Australian markets, as well as for international markets. BYD has the respective national BYD partner. For all other support and warranty claims of Fronius products, of course, you can contact us, but if the problem lies with the BYD battery, please contact the specific national BYD partner. Further information, of course, you find on our website, fronius.com, and there you can search for the download section, for example, for operating manuals and installation instruction on the BYD and Fronius system. There you will find further information for installation and commissioning of the system itself. And of course, I very welcome you to our trainings here in Wales, here at Fronius. And of course, we have storage and energy management trainings for you, where you will find the newest information about the BYD battery systems and further storage systems. So if you're interested in this, please come visit us for our trainings. You can find them on our Fronius homepage under the info center, and just click on events to see the newest trainings that are available for you, where you will see installation and commissioning of the systems at the live training site. Furthermore, you can check out our YouTube channel. So we have how-to videos and other useful webinars and YouTube channel links there. So just go to YouTube and visit our Fronius Solar site. Last information here is, of course, the software version. So if you plan to install a HVM system with the Fronius Simul Hybrid, as I said before, on 10th of August, the software version, this firmware update, will be available for the Simul Hybrid devices. So if you plan to install such a system, please make sure to check out the new firmware update on 10th of August. Okay, this is it so far. If you have any further questions, we will stay in the chat online for you. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask us these questions and we will answer them for you in the chat function. I thank you for your attention today and for participation. Of course, I hope I will see some of you in one of our next trainings, or of course here in one of our webinars or on YouTube. So thank you for your participation today. I wish you all the best until the next time here at Fronius. See you and goodbye.